Hello and welcome to the Goal is AFL podcast with me, Harry, and Caleb up there. We are ready to go. This is round one review. We are so excited that the football has come back. We are incredibly happy that first of all, Brisbane won. We're incredibly happy to have a lot of games in our lives. We are also happy, as we live in Brisbane, that the weather feels like it is turning a little bit. I don't know how it is down your way on the south side, but up here it feels like we're getting a little bit of a nice cool breeze. So I'm very excited about the weather changing, the footy being back. How was your weekend, Caleb? How are you feeling?
Yeah, it was good. I was going to say, on my weekends, because I'm normally busy, I don't get the opportunity to watch and consume as much footy. But this weekend, I actually did get that opportunity to consume every team around the colourful country that we have. Mm-hmm. And it was very exciting to see some upsetting results, some results that you expected, and of course, the mighty Brisbane Lions getting their first win of the season.
It's throughout the season, we're definitely going to be kind of in and out in terms of obviously, we work on the weekends and not being able to watch every single second of every single game, not only because you're working, but because of, just life commitments, means that you can't watch everything all the time. But it's awesome to kind of lock into round one and just being like, this is the start of the footy season. Opening round, bust. This feels like the actual start of the footy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
We're going to go through all the games and kind of give us a bit of a rundown. We might go a little bit in depth into some of them. We might go a little bit less into some of the others. But at the end, we'll also give our 3 votes as to who we thought our best 3 players of the round were. But we're going to start from the very first game. This feels like a momentous occasion and
the Tigers.
A little bit of a fluke, if I'm going to be honest. I don't know how you felt about it, but the Richmond Tigers defeating the Carlton Blues, who, we thought that there were a bunch of 19-year-olds running around for Richmond, and obviously a team that we thought was a lot better in Carlton. I think they will still be very good, but man, that was wild, and I think that was one of the most unprecedented kind of surprising results in the last few years. What were your thoughts about watching this game?
Well, I mentioned in a previous episode how Michael Voss spent some time in England under the apprenticeship of Ange Postecoglou, the Spurs English Premier League manager. And it seems that some of his negative energy has rubbed off on Vossi, because that was a very Spursy result.
Yeah.
To lose in that fashion where you had such a dominant first quarter, where you're getting on the scoreboard and putting the pressure on. I don't know if complacency came into it at all, but when I was watching this game, I was tremendously surprised by Richmond's ability to just stay in the game and just throw that fishing line out. And it was a tough reel all the way, but they eventually got the Blues within touching distance. And to be able to stay composed in that fourth quarter with so many young players and to get the result, I was not only shocked like the rest of the footy community, but I was very, very happy to see it because it's a great footy story to open the season. Grabs plenty of headlines, and I think it's also an interesting time for Carlton fans to reflect on themselves because they had some pretty shocking takes post-match because, they obviously think that they're going to be up the top, as Harry and I do as well, competing for a potential premiership. But to get off to that terrible start definitely didn't favour anyone in that Blues community. They were not happy in the slightest.
They actually, after this game, the day after was their membership day, where they basically try and get everyone to sign up for more season memberships. And they actually canned a whole bunch of players coming out and doing appearances because they knew that was not going to go very well, especially after that performance. And, just looking at the start that they had, they got off to a 41-point lead. And you'd think, 41 points against what a lot of people are considering the worst team in the league. Surely you're going to have that. And I pretty much stopped watching the game because I had other things to do, but also just kind of switched off. And then someone texted me are you looking at this score? And I was like, oh my goodness, what the heck is going on? So I watched the last little bit and man, I could not believe it. It's not a wild take to say that is one of the most surprising results of the whole year. If we look at the worm, you can kind of see a little bit of a good, trajectory of where we're at in the game. Obviously, you can see at the start, towards the second quarter, towards halftime, you can see Carlton really getting out to that lead. But then slowly but surely, over the next quarter and a half, Richmond just getting up. I think they actually got up to 17-point lead, as you can see kind of at the end of the fourth there. And then there's not much you can do once you get up to that sort of lead, especially with like 2 minutes to go. I mean, Carlton just capitulated. I don't know. I'd be incredibly unhappy. Of course, it's like the obvious statement if I was a Carlton fan. And yeah, but I think they're still going to be good. I think they're still going to be up there. Richmond, enjoy it. I don't think their fans are under any assumptions that this is a sign that they're going to be good this year. I don't know if you feel that, Caleb. What did you think about this as a Richmond starting point? I don't think we're going to change our idea about what they're going to be.
No, I don't anticipate the Tigers being a team that somehow surprises and gets plenty of wins under their belt and pushes up towards the top end of the table. I definitely expect them to be still towards the bottom. It's really up to this young team to prove to the competition, was this a fluke or is there something simmering at the Tigers? And only time will tell. But no, I'm not expecting anything crazy from the Richmond team this year.
We're going to move on to our next game of the day, which is the Friday night game, which was the Hawks versus Essendon. 111-85 was the final. The Hawks pretty much led the entire game. There wasn't really a point where Essendon made it any more of a game. The scoreline is probably of 26 points is actually probably a little bit flattering to Essendon. It didn't really feel like they were in the game at any point. The Hawks kind of had a fair amount of momentum, obviously coming off their opening round game against Sydney. And as you can see with the worm there, it pretty much was Hawthorn the whole time. There's a little bit of a dip, but the game was over by about half time, maybe three-quarter time. So I think that Hawthorn continued their good form, and a lot of people like myself might be second-guessing the fall that we might have predicted them to have. But again, it's only 2 games in, but they did look very, very strong. What did you think about this one, Caleb?
Well, I'm not surprised at all by the Hawks. I'll say I'm expecting them to have a really good season. I think Troll up front for them is a formidable forward line member to have down there. And they've got plenty of exciting players in the midfield who can grab the footy and get those clearances and get them always propelled forward. But I just want to have a quick word on Essendon because obviously I anticipated that they're going to have a good season. I did actually see enough from them to still remain confident in my prediction. They've definitely got a lot of assets at their disposal, and I think they will still have a good season. They just need to be a bit more refined in their composure going into the forward line and just tighten up a little bit more defensively, making sure that they're not allowing the opposition to make leads into space and just get easy marks. But I was pleasantly surprised by the Bombers. I genuinely think that they'll still be a really good team. And even though it was a tough day at the office against the Hawks for their first game, I wouldn't be jumping to conclusions and writing them off at all.
Okay. They still had some pretty stand-up performances. Zach Merritt doing his thing. They had Jai Caldwell getting like 36 disposals, 11 tackles. Like he had an outstanding game. A bit of a shining star in that loss. Hawthorn looked very strong. Small forwards doing their job. Midfield looks pretty much elite at this point. So I think the Hawks obviously are very happy with where they are at the moment. But then, like you said, Essendon can see some positives to build from. So that looks
100%.
like... It looks like it's not going to be, a season where they're contending for the premiership, Essendon, but we'll see how they go. And I think that some Essendon fans would be encouraged by the result that we saw. The next game we saw was the early Saturday game. It was the Geelong Cats down at their home stadium versus the Freo Dockers. The Geelong Cats winning 147-69. Nice. This is the Cats' first home game, obviously, of the season, and man, they look strong. Like, they just put the foot down late in the second quarter and just, they just basically said, come and get us, Freo. And Freo fans might be a little bit disappointed, to be honest. I know that they don't play that well away from home, and Geelong are very strong at home. But I probably expected a little bit more from Freo. What did you think about Freo's performance in this one?
No, nothing about this surprised me at all, okay. Harry. I was going to say Geelong are such a formidable team. I predict them to be the best in the competition. Bailey Smith contributing with plenty of disposals and getting a goal in the last quarter to get the cherry on top. Paddy Dangerfield, obviously always looking dangerous. And then Jeremy Cameron picking up 4 goals in his first game. Definitely lots to be excited about if you're a Cats fan. And that result didn't surprise me in the slightest. The only thing that did surprise me from this game, and forgive me, I've forgotten the name of the player, but there was a kid from Freo who made his debut. Yeah, and he kicked, I think, 4 goals in a quarter or something crazy like that. 4 goals in
10 minutes, 3 goals in 3 minutes, which was pretty wild. Like, I don't see that very often. Yeah, shout out to him for that performance.
100%.
Debuting. That was pretty cool. Yeah.
So I was going to say, I think Fremantle have, I feel, some expectations to be pushing deep into the finals this year. I'm not sure if they will, but again, it's a one-off game. I'm not going to make a verdict on the Dockers as of yet, but this specific game and this specific result, nothing about it surprises me.
Okay. I thought the Freo were going to be a bit better. I definitely was. I was not surprised that Geelong were very strong. I was basically watching this while I was working, just seeing the score go up and up and up and continue to go up, and I was like, okay, Geelong, that's a bit scary. They're the team that the Lions have got to play in the next couple of weeks, especially that was going to be the home opener for the Lions. But man, yeah, they look strong, and your prediction of them being top of the ladder looks pretty good. So we'll move on to our next game, which was the Brisbane Lions, the defending reigning AFL champions, defeating the Sydney Swans 86-82 in a thrilling back and forth clash of a grand final rematch. As you can see, the Swans had a little bit of a lead in the second quarter there. They went into half time with a 45-32 lead, and then after that it was a bit of a tussle in the third quarter, and then the Lions just pipped them right at the end. So a very nice seesawing back and forth event. The Lions had Charlie Cameron being laid out, Levi Ashcroft coming in making his debut. You had obviously no Joe Danaher. You had Lincoln McCarthy, who I don't know, I feel so sorry for Lincoln McCarthy. Like, everyone, they hung his jersey on the side of the entrance. All of these things, and you think, how are we going to do this? We hadn't practiced in a week, and to get this result is an absolute testament. So what were your thoughts about the Lions beating the Swans in a grand final rematch?
I'm going to echo what Chris Fagan said in his post-match interview. I'm just so proud of the boys to be able to stick together, dig deep, and show the determination and the will to get the 4 points. Because going to Sydney for the first game of the season with the most obtuse, random, unexpected prep going into it, and then have a first quarter that was not good enough, in my opinion, and to have players like Logan Morris go off with a potential injury, and then Kai Lohmann get ruled out for the whole game. So, it just, all the cards were stacked against us, and the fact that we were able to somehow win the game, I think, again, shows to the competition that the Brisbane Lions are just not someone to be messed with.
Yeah.
And we've got plenty of players who are on the fringes, like Connor McKenna, who can come in and do a job. And there's plenty of others on the fringes as well that can come in for those guys that have been injured and ruled out, like Starcevic. The Lions, look, from the first quarter right up to the very end, I was extremely nervous and not anticipating us to win. I thought Sydney were going to run away with it in the first half, and then we somehow were able to get ourselves back on the scoreboard and get ourselves competitive again. And then they had a couple opportunities at the end, did the Swannies, and they just weren't able to capitalize. So the fact that we were able to win this game with everything going on around it just, again, makes me so incredibly proud to be a Brisbane Lions fan.
It's one of those, take care of business kind of games. Just get in there. Doesn't matter how much you win by, just get it done. And, they didn't have their ruck / backup forward option as well in Sam Day, who was out of the game for a personal grievance issue. Had his father pass away, so he didn't go to Sydney with the team and play, which is understandable. And we lost, as you said, Kai Lohmann at the start of the game. Obviously the other injuries with Lincoln McCarthy, but positives, Levi Ashcroft is a gun. He's a certified AFL footballer. He looks as good in his first game, if not better than what Will Ashcroft did. Just saying.
We've got plenty of weapons of mass destruction in our team, so I'm so excited.
It's definitely scary, and I think that if our backline stays nice and healthy, obviously Harris Andrews is a rock, those sort of things, and I think that going to Sydney, who were obviously looking for revenge from their first game and also revenge from the grand final, so all of those things. And then let's pivot a little bit to the Swans. If you're a Swans fan, what are you thinking right now? Like, what's your
You'd still be
mindset?
optimistic. Yeah. Like, to be fair, look at their first two games against the Hawks and against the Lions.
Against
two teams
two
that
of the
are
best teams,
equal in terms of quality, and they didn't get played off the park in either game. They both games they performed well in.
Yeah.
So if I was a Swans fan, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
down in the dumps and the catastrophizing. These are just two unfortunate results, and you just got to maintain a positive attitude in the dressing room. Learn from your mistakes and keep going forward. And like I said, I think they're not going to be finishing towards the very top of the table. I think I had them sort of fifth or no. What did I have?
They'll be in that fifth, sixth spot, maybe
sixth
fourth.
spot. I think I had them in.
Maybe
But
even
regardless,
fourth,
like they're going to lose some
that.
games similar to the Lions, and they'll definitely be competing in the finals at the end of the season because they've got so much talent. But yeah, definitely nothing to be worried about in the early stages.
So that was the 4:35 p.m. game for those on the East Coast, and we move on to the night games, which I didn't actually get to watch a whole bunch because, as I said before, I was watching these at work, and sometimes you have to, you can't watch every single game like we spoke about before. But the undermanned Doggies playing the North Melbourne Kangaroos, 113-97 was the final result there. As we can see on the worm, it was pretty much Doggies the whole time. There were some moments where the North came a little bit close, but I mean, the Doggies kind of pushed forward and just pretty much proved everyone wrong. Am I right to say that? A lot of people didn't give them much chance. I think if they played any other team besides North Melbourne, maybe anywhere in that middle to good echelon of teams, they probably would have lost this game. But again, North Melbourne's still not quite there in their class. But I mean, a little bit of a better showing. Scoring 97 points in an AFL game is not easy, and I think that...
What's your man, Nick Larkey, who
Nick
got
Larkey,
the 5 goals? So.
Yeah, Mike Coleman, medalist, Nick Larkey scoring 5 goals. Shout out to also Tristan Sherry was one of the... I reckon he's going to be the All-Australian ruckman. He put on an amazing performance, and he pretty much dominated the other All-Australian ruckman who people think is going to be Tim English. So, they've definitely got some bright spots in the Kangaroos team, but yeah, Doggies just too good for this one. How was your read on this game, Caleb?
Look, the Bulldogs getting a victory over the North Melbourne doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I'm also throwing question marks around North Melbourne as a footy club. Again, it's one game into the season, so I'm not going to make a definitive verdict like some others in the media. But if they don't get off to a good start, a lot of people are going to be, very upset because they've had plenty of years to start building a foundation of a rebuild. And Alistair Clarkson has been there, done it. He's so experienced. And yeah, like I said, question marks will be thrown around. But it's the first game of the season. The Doggies will be in amongst it for finals footy. And this, again, result doesn't surprise me in the slightest, getting the job done over the Kangaroos.
Yeah, you can kind of see North being a little bit frustrated with not being a little bit further ahead. I mean, they still have great young players like Harry Sheasel, Jai Simpkin being their kind of captain leader. As I said, Tristan Sherry, some of their great players. But you look at, say what Hawthorn's done, going from premiership to kind of rebuilding in such a short period of time. Some of these other teams, like North Melbourne, like maybe West Coast, would be looking at it and be like, what are we doing wrong? Why are we not up at this level yet? So I think if we don't see a little bit better performance from North, they might be a few more questions. But this is something that I wasn't that surprised by. Let's just say that. Our next game, which was the other Saturday night game, was the Collingwood Magpies versus the Port Adelaide, the Battle of the Pinstripes, the Battle of the Prison Bars. This was 136-45. Incredibly poor showing from the Port Adelaide power here.
Shambolic, Harry.
Shambolic. This was bad. 21-10 to 6-9. Nice. The Magpies winning by 91 points. Nearly 100 points in your opening game is just, I don't know, if you're a Port fan, there is serious heat on Michael Voss and Ken Hinkley. There is serious heat on them. What did you read on this game?
Well, this is exactly what I expected coming into the season. Port Adelaide, I'll say the wheels on the bus go round and round until, it eventually doesn't. And I'm very, very convinced that this season is going to be a poor one for the Port Adelaide team. And Ken Hinkley, in his post-match presser, didn't have many words of encouragement, in my opinion. And like I said, a result like this is only going to breed more discontent amongst the dressing room. And I'm very interested to see how the home fans react when they go back to Adelaide and they play their first game there and the result doesn't go well. Will the boos ring out instantly or will they be a bit more patient into the season? Because to lose in this fashion to a Collingwood side, who will give them credit, they got off to a shocking start against GWS, but to then return back to Melbourne and put in a aggressive, high tempo, high energy performance and get the job done in such a convincing manner, you got to give credit where credit is due. But yeah, Port Adelaide, it's funny. I've said this a few times now. I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but nothing about this result surprised me in the slightest.
I mean, this is exactly what I expected from Collingwood coming back from a disappointing loss in an away stadium. I definitely expected Collingwood to come out all guns a-blazing, especially at their home ground. It was a hot day, in a hot evening, let's just say that, in Melbourne. I think that their experience, their class definitely showed in this, not getting too overawed by the huge crowd that they would have had there at the MCG. So this is what I expected. Collingwood, as we kind of spoke about pre-season, they're going to be up there. I definitely think that this is a bounce back. I'm not sure who they have next week. I should probably have looked that up before this, but if you can quickly look that one up for me. But I think that Collingwood will be, of course, excited about this result. And my take on Port would be...
Collingwood have the Bulldogs next week.
Bulldogs next.
And Port have Richmond at home.
And I think that that's the perfect result for Port Adelaide. Having a team like Richmond who they should... I mean, we said this about Carlton. They should smash them. So I think this is the perfect get-right game for Port coming up next week at their home ground.
Could you imagine if they lose that? Oh my God.
You would have to be...
The wheels would have truly fallen off the bus.
You'd have to be firing Ken Hinkley. If you don't fire Ken Hinkley after that, I mean, he's never going to get fired. Anyway, I think that's enough said about this game. This was, as you can see by the worm, it was an easy win for Collingwood start to finish. Our next game, which was the early game on Sunday, was the Adelaide Crows, the newly branded, new logo Adelaide Crows versus the hapless St Kilda Saints, 135-72. They just started the game like a house on fire and they never looked back. Crows basically dominated this from the very beginning. The Saints, a lot of injury problems. They looked like a mess. They looked completely outclassed. Some of the players like Josh Rochelle, Taylor Walker, Darcy Fogarty, all for the Adelaide Crows had really good games. Man, not really bright spots for the St Kilda Saints either. Didn't really like what I saw, but again, what did we expect? I don't think we really expected much else. Again, Crows being very strong, Saints not great. What was your thoughts about it?
Yeah, well, I was to say it's a pretty simple analysis. I think Ross Lyon is starting to lose some of his prestige because results like this do not do him any favours in the Melbourne media. But I think the big takeaway from this game is the Crows themselves. They actually played some pretty decent footy. I enjoyed watching this game. To have some really good contested footy, controlling the ball and dictating tempo and getting into the forward line. And then just being able to embarrass a lot of St Kilda defenders, like the amount of goals that they scored, where it was just basically walking through the goal square and putting into or putting it past the big sticks, was embarrassing from St Kilda. And for the first game at Adelaide Oval, I think puts this team in good stead. Again, I'm not in a position to be making a verdict on how well they'll perform overall this season for both these sides. I've already seen some very reactionary perspectives on saying the Crows are going to be going deep into finals and St Kilda's going to be finishing in the bottom four. I don't agree with that sort of a judgment. So I think it's too early to tell. Both these teams have a long way to go. And I'm someone who always starts to judge a league table about 10 games into the season because I feel like the first couple games, players are still getting their fitness. Some tactics are probably making, some tactical changes probably being made. And only after 10 games of the home and away season can you really look at the table and be like, that is a true reflection of where teams sit. And I was going to say, if you're a Saints fan, obviously you're worried. But if you're a Crows fan, bloody excited with getting a decent result at home for the first game of the season.
Definitely a good, strong home start there from the Adelaide Crows. The next game, which, if it wasn't for the Thursday night game with Richmond, I think that this would probably be the game of the round, which was surprising for a lot of people because Melbourne are kind of going through a bit of a soft rebuild in a lot of people's minds. They still obviously have like Clayton Oliver, Max Gawn, Petrarca, all those premiership stars, but they debuted 6 guys in this game. Shout out also to Harry Sharp, former Lion player who looked very good. I'm very glad to see that he's found a new club and got an opportunity. Obviously, trying to get into that Lions midfield is going to be hard for anyone. But yeah, shout out to Harry Sharp there. But the Giants winning 77-74 and a last minute goal from Lockie Keefe, who was delisted by the Giants and then brought back in because their number 1 ruckman was injured. So, a bit of a Cinderella fairy tale story there for Lockie Keefe.
Yeah.
So, man, that was exciting. Wet, windy, cold. Melbourne, of course, had the F1 at the same time as this game. So a lot of people were clowning the Melbourne Demons for not having a very big crowd, let's just say. But also, it was raining. Like, no one's going to sit in the lower bowl if it's raining. And also, people sit on the broadcast side instead of the non-broadcast side. Like, that's where the MCC members are, which that's most of the Melbourne fans. So, I'm not going to hold that against them. But anyway, this game was pretty awesome. I think that if we have a look at the worm right here, you can see how close it was the whole game. There was ups and downs, lead changes. GWS had the lead back and forth. And then just at the very end, the Giants just pipped them right at the end. It was a very nice seesawing event. What was your take on the overall game, Caleb?
Well, I have to confess, this is a game I didn't get to watch until the last 3 or 4 minutes of the final quarter because I was preoccupied watching the Formula One in Melbourne. That did grab my attention over this game. So it disappoints me to hear you say that this is one of the games of the round because, yeah, looking at that worm, it did look very back and forth, which is pretty exciting. But I think the biggest takeaway, just purely looking at the result for me, is the Demons actually competing with GWS. Obviously, a lot of people predicted that the Demons are going to be struggling severely this season. I still hold that opinion. I don't anticipate them winning a game until gather round. But yeah, GWS, again, a lot of people predict that they're going to be premiership contenders. I think it's still too early to say that. But they're obviously off to a good season winning their games. So for their one and only game at the MCG, the Giants,
which is crazy.
Very, very happy.
That's so crazy that GWS, the Lions don't play at the MCG very often. We play, they're very...
It's not surprising to me though, Harry. You need to remember, GWS wild. Have the lowest memberships. Like, they have the smallest fan base in the country.
Yeah.
They're from New South Wales. But
more than half the teams.
They're not going to... But, like, when you compare it to other teams in the competition, like, you're not going to get 60,000 or more for a GWS game. Unless it's a finals. Like, it's just not going to happen.
That's true.
It's more so an indictment of a sad indictment of Melbourne. The fact that they didn't get a big crowd for that game. I think it was only 23,000, if I remember correctly. So Demons fans need to step up. I know it was raining and the F1 and all that kind of stuff, but even I've seen over the last couple of seasons, they've had some pretty shocking turnouts in terms of crowd. So they need to step up. But I'm not surprised at all that GWS only have one game at Melbourne, at the MCG, I should say.
What a huge weekend for Melbourne. Like, that was crazy. 4 games at the MCG, 1 game at Marvel, F1 Grand Prix. Man, it must have been a heck of a time down there. That would have been crazy.
And I saw the AFL posted that this round 1 was the biggest or most attendance of any round in the competition's history. So, like, that in itself is, again, a good sign of the health of the AFL and the excitement and eagerness for footy fans to actually go out and watch the football live in stadium as opposed to sitting on their couch and watching it on Fox Footy like NRL fans do. Well,
the first 2 games at the G were more than the entire round of the NRL in stadium fans. The numbers are slightly inflated because the MCG obviously can hold up to 100,000, but it kind of shows a little bit of the differences between the codes. But we're not going to go too deep. We've still got one more game to cover.
Before we do jump into the last game between the Eagles and the Suns, I want to just take this opportunity to quickly touch on the idea of fans having more or being more encouraged to actually go and see games live because of the Fox versus Channel 7 broadcast deal for Super Saturday. I wonder if that has anything to do with attendances, because obviously a lot of people who don't have, pay TV are not going to be able to watch the AFL on Saturdays anymore. So I feel like that might force a lot more fans to go see games in stadium. Time will tell on whether that's a trend that continues. And also, it's an interesting debate, the Channel 7 coverage versus the Fox coverage, because I think it's a bit silly not having any footy on Saturdays anymore. I saw a lot of social media reactions to it being like, this is unacceptable, shameless cash grab from the AFL. And I'm not sure if it is. I wouldn't be surprised if it is, but I was going to say, if it does encourage more fans to sit in the stadium and get good crowds, then maybe the AFL is laughing all the way to the bank.
Well, this move was made by the previous CEO, Gillon McLachlan. So it was made before the new CEO, which is Andrew Dillon, came in a year ago. This has been in the works for a while, and this is kind of one of those, I'm going to make a deal, I'm going to look really good, I'm going to bring all this money to the league, and I'm just going to dip and not deal with the consequences of the fan backlash of not having any games on free-to-air. So, it is what it is, but yeah, I don't think people enjoyed not being able to see any of the games that we had on Saturday, but we've still got one more game to talk about on Sunday, which was the hapless West Coast Eagles versus the resurgent Gold Coast Suns in their all-red uni, which I still think is the worst uniform in the league, the Gold Coast Suns, and the Eagles, who were disappointing a lot of people. There was 60,000 people there at that stadium, and man, far out, that was terrible. That was pretty bad by the Eagles. Very almost lost by 100 points in your home opener. I mean, people would have been expecting more. They lost Jake Waterman for I think in the first quarter. So I definitely don't see a bright future, and I might have put them a little bit higher than what I should have for the Eagles. But I mean, time will tell. Again, Suns look strong, played well away from home, which was something they didn't do last year. New recruits looked good. Another year under Damien Hardwick, we could see some improvement. Your take of having them in 8th could be correct, but that was my kind of overall take of the last game of the round. What was yours?
No, I think you're pretty spot on. I think this was an entertaining watch for me, because I don't have a huge hatred of the Suns, even though they're our Queensland rivals. I've always seen them as the little brother within this state. So I hope that the Suns do well this season. The Sun, I think, will shine on Gold Coast this year. Like you said, the recruits have been good, but what was a true reflection of this game is the Eagles' just poor performance in all 3 phases of the game. Attacking just didn't offer much. The midfield battles, the contested footy, they just were no match to Matt Rowell and all the other cast of characters that Gold Coast have in there. And then the amount of inside 50s and clearances that Gold Coast got compared to the Eagles, it just was men against boys. And the Eagles, I think, are in for a really tough season, which is severely disappointing to say, because I love the Eagles. I love their jersey. I love their culture over there. They are the main team in the West, and I love it when they play finals footy and represent the Western Australia in great spirit. But it's going to be another tough season for them down the bottom of the table. Long live the Suns' reign under Damien Hardwick.
This was one of those games where I kind of wish that both teams could have lost. I think my brother's an Eagles fan, so I'm not a huge backer of the Eagles, and also the Suns being a Queensland team. I don't quite share the same thing where you don't really mind them.
It's because they've never posed much of a threat.
I think if
that changes, then I might feel differently.
I actively don't like them, so unfortunately for Suns fans, I can hear them all sounding off in the comments saying you guys suck. But yeah, it's just my personal opinion. I can appreciate that you guys played very well. I want to see it before I'm going to talk about any sort of positivity with the up-and-coming list that they've supposedly had for the last 5 years. So
it'll be more interesting to see when they come up against actual contenders like the Lions, the Hawks, GWS. How do the Suns truly compete against those teams?
Yeah.
Are they able to go 4 quarters and get victories? If they can, they're a serious threat. If not, then it'll just be another mediocre season for the Suns. But yeah, good start for them.
Well, they won't have an opportunity to play next week and prove that they're back at it because they are on a bye, as well as the Giants are also on a bye. But we're going to quickly just run through some of the some of the round 2 games. So we've got Carlton versus Hawthorn on Thursday night. That is going to be an amazing kind of again, sold out crowd at the MCG. Like, that's going to be a nuts atmosphere. Hopefully, I'd like to see Carlton bounce back a little bit, maybe give the Hawks a little bit of a run for their money. That's going to be an exciting game. Who do you think is going to win that one, Caleb?
I don't know. Draw.
I think Hawks, but Carlton probably... I think Hawks will win, but Carlton was the team I would like to win. Let's just say that. Collingwood versus Western Bulldogs is the next game, again at the MCG on Friday, which I think is kind of annoying to me because the Bulldogs, technically their home ground is Marvel, and yet now they're playing this game at the MCG, which is Collingwood's home ground. So again, Collingwood get the bump of being the away team at the MCG. It's ridiculous, but anyway, I could rant about that for ages. I think that Collingwood will probably win this game. Essendon versus Adelaide Crows is the first game early at the MCG on Saturday. We've got, Adelaide, can they do it away from home? Essendon, I think that they'll play very well in this game. I think that they're going to beat the Crows in this one. I think they're going to bounce back very nicely. You?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. It's a tough one to call, but I'm going to say Bombers.
Bombers, all right. We've got the next game, which is, as the game that we talked about before, was Port Adelaide versus Richmond. And of course, I'm going to tip Port Adelaide just because Richmond...
Yep.
I know they won, but I'm just not going to tip them. I'm sorry. Next one is St Kilda versus Geelong, which I think might be one of the most lopsided games of the round. Geelong is probably going to destroy St Kilda, although they are playing at Marvel Stadium, which is, of course, St Kilda's home ground. So we're going to hopefully see a little bit of a better performance from the injured Saints. The next one, which is an early Sunday game, which is the Lions versus the West Coast Eagles. And, man... excited to see the Lions unfurl the premiership flag. That is going to be a fun moment to see all the fans back at the Gabba. A early Sunday kickoff, man. It's going to be a fun time and hopefully will be an easy win for the Lions. I think that as long as we don't have too many injuries, I think that we should take out the chocolates on that one. So the next game we have is going to be North Melbourne versus Melbourne, which is at Marvel Stadium on Sunday. I think this is going to be an interesting game for North Melbourne to be like, are they for real?
I reckon they're going to win this, 100%.
I'm going to tip North Melbourne again. I tipped them last week and I was wrong, but I'm going to tip them again. And then the last game is going to be the Freo versus Sydney Swans. Both teams looking to get right. I think this is going to be an interesting, tight tussle. And man, if Sydney fall to 0-3, like that's a hard road hard hole to dig out of. I think that this is a game that Sydney and Freo will desperately want to put up a good showing and win. So this is a tight one. This will probably be one of the tightest games of the round. So I'm thinking Freo. I just think Freo played so well at home, and I think they'll want to bounce back. Sydney, if they're 0-3, man, that's hard. That's definitely hard.
I agree with that.
But our last point of business for the first round is the votes. And this is our votes for the round is Josh Dunkley at 3 votes. He was absolutely instrumental. Over 30 disposals. He had 10 tackles as well. He also had 4 marks. An incredible performance against the Sydney Swans. Our 2 votes was Bailey Smith in his return from a hiatus of injury from last season. A new club. I mean, man... you can't really ask for much more. That was awesome. And then last one was Tristan Sherry, the ruck for North Melbourne. Absolutely dominated Tim English. He was the best player on ground, for my opinion, which earned him the 1 vote. So 3 new vote getters. So no repeating vote getters. So we now have Josh Dunkley and Will Day on top with 3 votes for our season vote predictor and best player of the league for the year. So we're going to have an interesting, watch of the games coming up this week. Good to review, good to chat about them. Thank you so much to everybody for watching.
Footy's back. How good.
Footy is back. How good is it? It is great to have everyone fit and firing. All the teams have played a game now. We can talk about them with a little bit more confidence. I think opening round can get ditched and we can continue on with this format, and it's all systems go from now on. Besides some odd buys. Like the Suns probably wish they weren't on a bye next week and just could continue playing. But anyway, it is what it is. We will be back next week to review all those games. Did you have any final words before we head off, Caleb?
No final thoughts.
Nope. He is a man of concise and short thoughts.
Footy is back. That's all I have to say.
And footy is back. That's all we got to say. Again, thank you so much to everybody for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much to everyone who's left a comment on the videos so far. Really appreciate everyone who's been watching. If you want to see more of our, takes or what we want to talk about through the podcast, let us know in the comments if you have any suggestions. So we are going to be back next week for round 2. Thank you so much to everybody. Have a good day.